The real problem is happening in our own backyards. It's the fastest growing criminal enterprise in the world. How do we pull the hell out of humanity? How do we help each of us heal? He said, Mr. Hutchinson, I've been watching you for the last 4 days, and I think your country could use your talents.
Paul Hutchinson is a billionaire real estate investor who was recruited by the American State Department to fund and execute missions all over the world, rescuing children from human trafficking organizations. Throughout the course of his work, Paul went deep undercover, conducting rescue missions from Thailand to Peru to Mexico, where he helped rescue thousands of children. Paul explains to us how the business of trafficking actually works, what the root causes are, and how we can stop it. Paul is not only the executive producer of the film Sound of Freedom, which is based off his work, but he's now got a new book by the same name, which you can go pre-order right now. Go to soundoffreedombook.com, and the link to that will be in the description of the episode. This was a fascinating but deeply disturbing conversation, and for obvious reasons, we had to heavily censor it for the YouTube monitors, so I apologize for that. It's just kind of unavoidable when you have subject matter like this. If you want the fully uncensored version, I recommend going over to the Patreon, patreon.com/theconnectshow. It's just $4.99 for the whole month, and you get a bunch of bonus content that's not available anywhere else. All right, you guys, it was an honor sitting down with Paul. His work is exposing the darkest fringes of our society, and it's heroic. Paul Hutchinson, right here on The Connect with Johnny Mitchell.
Some of the most dangerous missions that I did were ones where we got arrested by local cops that were working with the traffickers. He takes away her phone, takes away her passport, and says, you will be earning $1,000 a day, otherwise bad things are going to happen to you. Finally, she got beat up to the point where she ended up in the hospital. I realized that just going in and rescuing the kids was never going to fix the problem.
I think it's important, first of all, to impress upon people that you're not some kind of religious nut. You know what I mean? Like, that's when the Sound of Music...
I was for a while.
You were, for sure.
30 years ago, yeah.
That's how you came up.
Yeah.
But I think people, maybe it's just me, or people that would look at a movie like Sound of Freedom and be like, oh, this is somehow the propaganda lumped rescuing children in with like the right wing or like republicanism or hardcore Christianity. I don't know how.
Well,
I'm not saying it's right, but they did.
It pisses me off. I mean, the only things religious that was in the movie was when Jim Caviezel says God's children are not for sale. And then when Bill Camp says when God tells you to do something, you don't hesitate. That's all. That's right. Literally the only references to God. Now, I will say that, while we were filming and while we were traveling, I spent a lot of time with Jim Caviezel, and him as a person, because of the fact that he played Jesus in Passion of the Christ, carries this persona of, in fact, it was funny as shit, right? So there were guys part of our movie, I won't say which ones, but they honestly thought that if you voted Democrat, you're probably a... And I'm like, guys, I said, right. you don't know if you know this. We arrested just as many guys on the right as we did the left. And the reality is there's a lot of religious fanatics. Their sexuality has been suppressed because of their upbringing, who end up doing this.
Who end up being the buyers.
Yeah. They're because they're already told that they're going to hell because they masturbated. They might as well do something more. They might as well do something more. And all of a sudden they're stuck in this cycle of guilt and shame and regret and self-loathing that takes them down this dark road in their addictions to, and then et cetera. In fact, there's some studies that have shown that the percentage of the population, that the highest percentage of viewers in the United States are in super conservative neighborhoods.
Wow.
So
there you go. So, but somehow we're so political in this country that we're even making and trafficking a political issue, or like, hey, I'm on this team. It's like, no. We've missed the mark on this, guys. But I think it's important because your background is one of this repressed religion, Mormonism.
Yeah.
And your journey, as we're going to see later, to God actually came when you left the church. and you had addictions yourself to money and the lifestyle of just being like a playboy, a rich playboy. But first of all, let's talk about the scope of this problem, because it's such an uncomfortable topic. I think that's another reason that the movie had so much problems getting financed and put out there, is because it's so messy. It's the worst of humanity.
It is.
You dealt for 10 years in the darkest corners of the human race, without a doubt. So tell us today, who are the biggest buyers of, and where are these children coming from, and what is the size of this illicit business? Do they speculate? Like, just give us a broad stroke it.
Here's a scary visualization. You walk in any neighborhood in the United States. I don't care if you're in an apartment complex or you're in an affluent neighborhood. You walk out in front of your porch or in front of your front door. You look left and you look right. There's a very high likelihood that one of those doors, one of those houses, is a very dangerous place for children. Okay? People think of, trafficking that it happens in a third world country. You go to Thailand, you go to Mexico, and yes, the type of trafficking that you saw in the movie Sound of Freedom, where they're taking and they're selling them, yes, that happens in those areas. But the real problem with is happening in our own backyards. The statistics are these: 40% or more of women that 40% or more have been a victim of abuse at some time in their life. 1/4 of all women, it was as a. Now that's just the ones that talk about it. The average age is 52 years old, right? They carry this their whole life. Most people never even talk about it. For men, it's a little bit less. It's 1 in 5 at some time in our life, but even them, 1 in 4 of those was under the age of 10 years old. So it's a big problem. And this is your uncles, this is your bishops, this is your neighbors, this is your brother, your cousin, etc., that are passing this trauma on to others. And it's serious. Now, when it comes to trafficking, selling them for these heinous crimes, it's very low percentage that child is taken from a healthy family, like what you saw in Sound of Freedom, put into a container ship and taken to another country, etc. What is more likely is that they're coming from broken homes or a broken foster care program or runaways, etc. And so doing things where you can keep your solid nuclear family together is super important.
So give us an example, like let's just go to Haiti, one of the poorest countries in the world. It's a broken, failed state. And you did a lot of work there. Where is a typical child? How do they end up in the hands of human traffickers? Well, and where do they end up generally?
Yeah.
At the end of that economic chain.
Yeah. There are children that are taken from healthy families. I didn't say wealthy families. I said healthy families. And this happens every day in second and third world countries where there's a good mom, there's a good dad, but the child is taken. They are drugged, and literally within a couple weeks, they are fully controlled. And we saw this over and over again, where the traffickers would say, I know where your mother lives. I know where your sister goes to school. You don't want something really bad to happen to them, do you? And so literally within a couple weeks, this child could be at a party, happy to be there, in full compliance because of the drugs, because of the fear that's been instilled in that child. So this happens all the time. And this happened, again, this should have never been not only a religious issue, it shouldn't have been a political issue. The open border policy should have never been a right or a left issue. There was 130,000 children a year that were being brought across that open border, undocumented, unaccompanied minors. And these children were taken from, a lot of them were taken from healthy families that didn't have the finances to be able to follow up and see what's happened to their kids. They were beat up, they were drugged, and then they were given a phone number and an address and taken to the border and said, listen, this is your new sponsor. And if they ended up in a home of a good family that wanted to take care of them, a huge percentage of them would run away within a couple weeks because they were told by their traffickers if they didn't end up at this sponsor's house that something bad would happen to their family.
Wow. So it sounds like in Haiti and rural Mexico, rural Colombia, Ecuador, kids, even from healthy families, can fall prey simply because they live in places that don't have strong institutions, law and order, strong police, right? I imagine that's why.
Well, in Haiti in particular, there's a program in Haiti called the Restovic program. So the Restovic program is a program where very, very poor families who cannot financially support their own children will take their kids to a Restovic program. And this Restovic house will feed them, take care of them, and legally sell them to another family who can take care of them, quote unquote. But there isn't any background checks on these families. There's no vetting. Yeah. So they're hoping that this new family is just going to make them work. And this is slavery in every way. And I talk about this in the Sound of Freedom book. It's a slavery in every way, legalized slavery in Haiti, where this child is required to work for this new family, sweeping, mopping, taking care of the house chores in exchange for food. But because there isn't any vetting that's being taken care of, there's a lot of these kids that end up in very dangerous homes.
Right.
In fact, one of the missions that we did, where I went in with a couple other operators as posing as doctors in the jungle in Haiti, was because of the fact that there was a lot of these drug runners that were growing drugs in this region. It was like 10 hours to the nearest police station, 5 hours driving, 5 hours walking into this jungle region. Nobody was there. Yeah, lawless area in every way. And these traffickers, these drug traffickers that needed additional help would go into the city and legally purchase a child from the Restovic program so that they could put them to work in their drug fields and be drug runners.
So indentured servitude and human trafficking, they kind of go hand in hand in this same pot. And it's these dispossessed places where you're the most at risk for falling victim to stuff like that. And so when people say, like, you've heard that statistic, there's more slaves now than there was during when slavery was actually illegal. This is what they're referring to.
Well, in addition to that, the controlled, sold human beings. There's more today than all 300 years of the transatlantic slave trade put together. And here's some other things too that people don't understand. There was a little girl who she was taken at 12 years old out of Mexico City, and she was drugged. She was controlled in every way. She was taken to New York. And she was, just so that the parents would stop looking for her, after a couple of years, the traffickers allowed her to literally check in, but told her if she said anything that they would kill her, they would kill her sister, her mom, etc. So the parents don't even know that she's being trafficked. Yet she's being sold at 13, 14 years old. She's being sold 30 or more times a day for sex in New York. Her pimp was taking her around to different hotels. They had this system that guys were being were on this list, and if she didn't get out of there within a half an hour with one of her Johns, then she would get beat up. She was 13, right? At 17 years old, she escaped. They beat her up severely and almost went to the hospital. And then at 17 years old, finally, she actually saw a phone number when she was in with one of the Johns. Mm-hmm. She saw a phone number of one of our sister foundations in Mexico that said in Spanish, if you're being trafficked, it was a super easy to remember number. So she memorized it. And sure enough, she was able to call that. And the next time she was in a hotel where there's a phone in the bathroom, and we were able to get her out. Well, she was with us over Christmas. We got her out of New York. She was, so my family, we had her just talking to her and helping her, because my wife at the time was Latina. And so they were having a great conversation. Well, I was talking to her and I said, listen, tell me this, in terms of how many people are involved in slavery who are in prostitution. Mm-hmm. I said, if you look online, you look at, back then there was Backpage, or there's, erotica.com, all of these online places where you can find girls who are supposedly independent.
Right.
And I said to her, I said, tell me this. Of the girls that say they're independent, these prostitutes that are working in New York, they work in Los Angeles, etc., guys thinking that they're a victimless crime because I'm an adult and she's an adult and it's just the laws that are against me. What percentage of those girls who claim that they're independent truly are? Is it really 50% of them that are being trafficked that have a pimp? Or is it less? She goes, oh no. She says it's well over 90, if not 95% of the girls who claim they are independent prostitutes. These are like 21 to 28-year-old, adults, quote unquote, are still being trafficked.
And might have been, and they could be into the game 15 years.
Absolutely.
Held completely hostage because their families are at the mercy of criminals that can kill them in their home countries. Just
like she was, getting to that age, she would have continued being trafficked into her 20s. Many of when we would go undercover to try to get in the door with the traffickers, one of our easiest ways to get in the door with them is to find somebody, a prostitute who's 21, 22 years old, build a relationship with her and ask her where you can buy. It's typical. We had one in Tijuana. She was 21 years old. She said, I've been working for the same guy for 11 years since she was 10.
Do you think they developed some kind of Stockholm syndrome?
Absolutely, they do.
They must, right?
Because in fact, what was amazing is a lot of the female traffickers were trafficked as children themselves.
Right.
So, and their pimps, like in this case in Tijuana, her pimp was an escaped convict from the U.S. who spoke Spanish and spoke English and was making plenty of money for the last decade as an escaped convict in Tijuana, selling minors to Americans.
You guys, I have some stand-up comedy dates to tell you about. August 20th, I will be at Mic Drop Comedy Club in San Diego, California. Then on August 21st, I will be in Chandler, Arizona. That's the Phoenix area. Then on August 24th, I will be in Plano, Texas. Go to micdropcomedy.com and search for Johnny Mitchell. I am doing mic drops in all three of those cities, San Diego, Chandler, Arizona, and Plano, Texas, at the Mic Drop Comedy Clubs. Can't wait to see you out there.
Do you think if prostitution were legal and regulated in the United States, for example, do you think that, a lot of people say that with drugs, hey, you would eliminate drug trafficking if all drugs were legal. Do you think if prostitution were at least above board, do you think that would eliminate a lot of that black market element? I
have firsthand knowledge of this that is going to piss some people off. So here's what it is.
It's already pissing me off. No,
exactly. So I did some undercover work in Amsterdam. Amsterdam, fully legal, very regulated.
Yes.
And for weeks, we were not able to find any minors that were being sold and any trafficking of even adult women at all. Nothing. Because it was so regulated. I wrote a report that we submitted to the Senate in Colombia. And I said, listen, here's the thing. First of all, don't get me wrong. I am not advocating prostitution. I have seen whether it's fully independent or being trafficked. The reality is I have seen families destroyed. I have seen all this happen because of prostitution, right? However, if you are going to legalize it, you have to control it.
Yeah.
You have to control it, because what happens if you've got places like Los Angeles, New York, around every city in the United States has prostitution. Most of them are illegal, and most of that illegal prostitution has trafficking involved.
Absolutely.
Because it's already illegal. So you're already doing something illegal. You might as well be controlling the situation.
It's perfect for the traffickers, especially if they're from Latin America, because, hey, you have the United States, biggest black market, most money, biggest buyers, and you can get away with murder. You can hold girls hostage by holding their families hostage from a distance.
Absolutely.
What you said about that girl in New York is chilling, because you think about how many trafficked girls are just every day on the subway, woven into the fabric of society. Nobody bats an eye. Nobody has any idea. So tell us how that was broken up. Were these people arrested?
With the one in New York?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. 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 After she was able to get out, then we were able to take the leads. And this is what happened. A lot of the big arrests come from just getting one victim out and then getting all of the information on how and a lot of these girls don't want to talk. They're scared to death. In fact, there was a girl, this is a sad story, but I think it's important for this part of the conversation. So she was in Ecuador. At 8 years old, her mother died. Her father was a raging alcoholic. She was sent to live with her uncle. By the time she was 10, her uncle was her. She spoke to the family and they're like, you ungrateful, you're bringing up these false accusations, whatever. So she now is the perfect target for traffickers. So she doesn't have any friends. She's walking to school with her head down, and an older man, trafficker in the area who was working with the trafficking network, identified her and started building a relationship with her. And so after a few months of this relationship, he says, you know what? You're in a really bad place where you're getting by your uncle every day. I can help you get out of there if you want to. I can help you get to a better place. And so, he buys her a plane ticket to Peru. Now, by now she's a couple years older, but she's still she's not 10 anymore. She's like 13 years old. But he buys her a ticket to Peru. And once they get there, he takes away her phone, takes away her passport, buys her really sexy clothes, and then introduces her to the other girls that are there and says, you will be earning $1,000 a day. Otherwise, bad things are going to happen to you. Now, she has nowhere to go. She has nowhere to call, nothing at all, right? And she had been... so she was trafficked until she was 15, about 2 years, making $1,000 a day. She got beat up once. Now realize this, she was only making like $50 per John. She's having to sleep with 20 guys a day just to not get beat up. And then finally, she got beat up to the point where she ended up in the hospital. Now, the Child Liberation Foundation, one of the things that we do is create certification programs for doctors, for people working in hotels, hospitality, et cetera. And these doctors, because they were certified in knowing what to look for with trafficking, identified the signs of her coming in. Right. And so we were called. My wife went in. My wife runs the aftercare for the foundation. She speaks fluent Spanish. She's from Colombia. And she's talking to this girl and finds out this whole story of where she came from. Now, this girl was the one thing that she wanted to get her phone back so that she could call her pimp and tell him she was okay.
Oh my God. But when you what do they call it? Groom a girl from the age of 8. Yeah. I mean, that's her brain is fully invested in this is her whole world.
Yeah. So with her, after we got that information from this little girl, we started putting all of the pieces together for this network and realized that this network was not only trafficking these children in Peru, but that they were getting a lot of these kids from poor neighborhoods. Their identifiers of these kids were in these poor areas throughout Ecuador. And so we put together all the pieces of it, and I went in, did deep cover for about 3 months, and we took down 6 separate trafficking rings that were in Ecuador that were between Ecuador, Peru, and other countries in Latin America, all because of the leads that we were able to get from this one little girl.
Okay, so the scope of these trafficking groups, you took down 6 of them just in Ecuador. How many people does that entail, from the people that identify the potential victims to the actual couriers, all the way to the pimps? Like, how vast are these networks? How do they communicate? Are they like drug cartels? Is there any crossover with actual drug cartels, Mexican drug cartels, or are those distinct? Tell us about how they organize themselves.
Sometimes there's crossover, but here's what I love about Latin America. And
the women.
Yeah, they're beautiful. Yeah, I've now had 2 wives from Latin America, so I'm on a good roll.
I picked that up. I was like, oh, your ex was Latin, and now your current is okay.
So yeah, not only they have beautiful women, but now again, don't get me wrong on this. The drug trafficking trade is destroying people, destroying families. However, there's a pecking order in the judicial, in the prisons here in the United States, if you put a in prison here in the US, if they're in prison with a bunch of bank robbers and drug guys, they're going to get the beat out of them. Mm-hmm. Well, that's the same in a lot of the Latin countries as well.
They'll probably be killed, most likely.
Absolutely. Yeah. I had one guy who was one of our informants, was the head of the cartel in the area. He was a drug lord. And he said, listen, you may not agree with how I do business, but I've got children of my own, and those guys are evil, and I'm going to kill them. And if I do, you got a whole bunch of little kids. You don't know where they are. Or I tell you everything I know. You go in, you make sure that those kids get back to their families. You make sure he goes to jail, and I'll take care of it from there. Yeah, right? For sure. We had 4 traffickers got killed while we were undercover. They were killed by either cartel guys or other traffickers.
Right.
Which is fascinating. Now, yes, there were a few where the drug cartels were involved in trafficking, but it's not as most of the trafficking were small independent cells throughout Latin America, because if they had a bigger network, there are too many guys in the drug cartel that won't put up with that. That would just take them out. Now, you go over to Europe, you've got the Russian mafia. They're running all of it.
Totally.
Now you're getting some dangerous. Right. Yeah. But in Latin America, it's a different story. And so
we were just down in Guadalajara, and the CJNG, the Nuevo Jalisco cartel, they'll kill you just for putting your hands on your wife, just for smacking your wife. If you're in the organization, they'll beat you to the point of death, or they'll kill you if it's your second strike. So they definitely, they're so family oriented. They might have killed 1,000 enemies from an opposing cartel, but you do not touch children.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. So it's really just these small, I don't know, 10, 20.
Each one of them were maybe 10, 20. Yeah.
And are they themselves, or are some of these guys just look at it as a business?
A lot of them look at it as a business. In fact, what I realized, this was crazy. I realized after 10 years of undercover work, over 70 missions in 15 countries, I realized that just going in and rescuing the kids was never going to fix the problem, because every time we pulled 10 kids out of hell or 20 kids out of hell, another 10 would be sucked back in to fill the demand. And I also came to understand, so as I'm stepping back, I thought, okay, how do we really fix this problem? And it came with an understanding of the fact that most of the traffickers were trafficked themselves as children, and or had a really rough childhood in some way, and they were just trying to make money now. Yeah. A lot of them were just hustlers, and they realized that there was a demand from Westerners, from Americans that were coming down, and they're like, well, there's a way I can make money.
Yeah, don't you mention either in your book or maybe it was on another podcast, you were doing undercover work, and a pimp or one of these heads of one of these rings took a selfie with his daughter.
Yeah.
He's got a family himself.
Yeah. This guy, it was a crazy, he took this picture of himself with his little girl in the backseat. She's 3 years old. Now this guy was setting up this, he had a piece of property he wanted to develop into a child sex resort. He had this business plan where he was going to make tens of millions of dollars a year selling to wealthy Americans. And so I'm texting back and forth with this guy, and he sends me this selfie with this little girl, and he says, I just wanted to show you why I'm doing this. I want to make sure that she has a wonderful lifestyle her whole life. And I'm like, what the right? And then he had another text a little bit later on that he said, I believe that God sent you to me so that I could fulfill all of my dreams. And I thought to myself, you're right. God did send me to you. So I can make sure that little girl in your back seat never has to go through what a lot of traffickers' kids do. It's amazing how high of a percentage of traffickers of young kids, by the time those kids are 10 or 11 years old, they're now trafficking their own kids as well.
Wow. So they think they're not going to cross that line, but they end up doing it. Just like in the drug game, most drug traffickers, even on a high level, become addicts. Talk about the Westerners. Talk about if a young 13-year-old girl from Ecuador gets trafficked to Peru and she is generating $1,000 American a day, that is probably Westerners paying. where are they set up? No, famously in the movie, you went undercover as a billionaire that was going to invest in this hotel that was actually just a dungeon, a giant dungeon for Westerners to come and have sex with minors. In the rest of Latin America, does it work kind of like that, or where are the venues? Where does this go on? How do they market it?
Our most successful operations were in places where Westerners would travel for vacation. So, Puerto Vallarta and Cancun,
right.
and, and even some of the older ones like Acapulco, which is kind of dangerous now for
right. Westerners,
but there are still some that will go there anyway, because they know that there's a lot of this stuff going on. And so what will happen is if you're walking down the 10th Street in Puerto Vallarta or whatever, you're going down and you're there with your wife or your girlfriend, people will come out and offer you things to buy, to gold and jewelry and whatever else. You go walking down there with just a couple dudes and you're dressing, I had a hat that said upside down on it, right? I had this big chain. I had a gold chain. I had a silver chain. I had a shirt that had a picture of a doctor on it that says, "I'm no gynecologist, but I'll take a look," right?
Oh, God.
So I'm looking this part. You go walking down the street looking like that, it's 2 or 3 minutes and guys will come out of the woodwork and start offering you sex.
Right.
Immediately. Hey, you want some blow? You want some cocaine? You want some weed? What do you want? And I say, "Oh, we don't want any of that." "Oh, I got some girls." "Yeah, really? What you got?" And they pull up their phone, they show you some girls, and all I had to do is say one word: abuelas, grandmas. Those are grandmas. And when they're showing me a 22-year-old, they go, "Oh, I see," and boom, they open up another folder.
So they pull the thread just to test, is this guy real sick?
Yeah.
And it doesn't take long. Yep. And so that's how that gets marketed to people in these places. Lima, Peru, like who would have thought that's where it boggles the mind. Do you think the digital revolution and the availability of, do you think that has contributed to the sickness that is philia, that's wanting to have
in every way? Now, almost every dude listening to us has seen, doesn't mean you're going to become a, however, every one of these guys started out not only with some childhood trauma, but with a hardcore addiction. Now, here's what happens. If you're watching with your girlfriend, getting some ideas and whatever, that's one thing. But and this is where it comes into this subjugation of sexuality in certain cultures, right? If you're looking at and you're already thinking you're going to hell, and you've got this guilt and this shame and this remorse and this negative self-loathing that comes with it, you're in the privacy of your own office, and that kind of energy creates an addiction. And just like any hard drug addiction, a lot of guys need something harder to have that same fix. And so they progress. The progression goes, from their regular sex videos, all of a sudden that progression for some of them is BDSM, for some of them it's videos, for some of them it's animal, right? For some of them it's a little bit younger. And pretty soon they're fantasizing about something they wouldn't have even thought was attractive 5 years ago. And then they're acting out on these horrific fantasies. It's creating a tsunami of demand for the unthinkable. Yeah. Now, a lot of guys are like, "Oh, I'm not addicted." Okay, stop it for a year and tell me if you're not addicted. You're absolutely addicted. And they're like, "Well, it's not progressing." Yes, it is. Guess what? You probably started out with a swimsuit issue of Sports Illustrated, and then when you became a teenager, then it ended up with the Victoria's Secret models, and then it ended up with booby pictures, and then it ended up full nudes, and now it's videos, and now it's progressing. It's insatiable because it's not fulfilling like a healthy relationship, and in doing so, it's much like a hard drug, and it's going to progress to something worse and worse.
So we used to think that you're just born like that. And certainly, I'm sure a percentage of people are born with that DNA that's just off, possibly. But it sounds like most of them are created.
I would say that in every way. And this goes with a lot of perversions. And I'm gonna call them perversions, but I don't judge. I've got friends that are homosexual, great friends. I've got, there's, as long as you are not hurting another human being, I'm not going to judge. Right. But a lot of my friends who are homosexual will say, Paul, the reason I'm homosexual is because my first sexual experience was with my cousin at 7 years old. And that's what pushed me into this sexual behavior. And it's the same thing with a lot of people who are involved in this stuff. Now, here's something important. As I was trying to understand, after 10 years of undercover and trying to figure out, realizing there's more kids being sold today than there was 10 years ago, I thought, what the hell? Paul, if your goal is to eradicate this evil from the face of the earth, you're not doing a very good job. And so what do we need to do? We need to take a look at where it's coming from. And not only are the traffickers likely ones who had been trafficked as children, the perpetrators were likely victims as children. Now, the majority of people who are abused as the majority become protectors, not abusers. A lot of my undercover operators were abusers themselves, and they grow up with this anger towards that to the point where they will put their lives in danger to ensure the safety of children. However, there is a small percentage. Sadly, it's higher than you think. Statistically, it's about 1 in 3 people who were as children, if not given the love, the help, the healing, the tools that they need, become a contact offender in either physical, verbal, or abuse of it. And so people are like, well, that's why I won't want to tell anybody. They're going to think I'm going to be a... No, guess what? Just talking about it takes it from 1 in 3 to about 1 in 100. Just getting it off your chest, it's holding on to all of that pain that's eating you up, that's coming out in low self-esteem, in anger, in anxiety and depression, and in that trauma transfer, in taking that trauma that you're holding on and passing it on to another human being.
There's so many people, though. I mean, in the Sound of Freedom, the statistic they gave just for, I think, child in America was in like the billions. So when you couple that with the sex tourism of all these places, Colombia, Thailand, Mexico, et cetera, I mean, it's on par with drug trafficking. It is in terms of the size of the industry, which is creepy even to refer to as an industry, but it is.
They say that it's the fastest growing criminal enterprise in the world. Second at fastest growing, and it's the second most profitable. It surpassed the illegal arms trade, and it's believed that it will soon surpass the drug trade, because you can sell, like we said in the movie, you can sell a bag of cocaine once, you can sell it 5, 10, 20, even 30 times a day in a lot of cases for years.
I respectfully disagree. Because when I look at the border policy, and I disagree with probably, 80% of Trump's rhetoric, who even knows what's going to happen, because he says he's going to do one thing and then he backs out of it. But I think 90% of illegal crossings are down. And inevitably that means that we're going to get traffic to New York to be held hostage for 20 years. And they're not going to get a chance to, the traffickers aren't going to be able to bring them over. That's how I see it. So I think border controls will have an effect. Now, they could just end up in Mexico and have an even more horrific existence, and
that's really what happened for years. That's why it was so effective for us to go down as white Americans. To go into these places and pretend to be buyers and take down these rings, is because that's where the demand was coming from. Right. A Mexican federale couldn't go in and pose as a buyer and get nearly the distance that I could. I was able to go into places and literally within 24 hours get further on very specific targets than the Mexican federal police were able to do in 2 or 3 years. This came from the head of the Mexican federal police. He called me after one of the things. He says, this is incredible. He says, we've been after this guy for 3 years. Nobody has been able to get close to him. He said, literally within 48 hours on the ground, you have his cell phone number.
Oh, wow. It's because you're a gringo and they think rightly that you have money.
Exactly.
It's that simple.
Exactly.
True classic. Guys, I'm wearing True Classic. Every time I do an ad read for True Classic, I am coincidentally wearing True Classic. I didn't put this on because I knew I had to do this ad read today. You can ask my producer. I am always rocking True Classic. I'm going to Mexico next week. I got a shorty, a señorita I've got to impress. Look, I look damn good, dude. I look like a narco. I look like Señor de los Cielos. That's what I feel when I'm in this shirt. Honestly, that's how I feel. Why would I go shop anywhere else? I wouldn't. Look at that. It's breathable. No bunching, no stiff fabric, no BS. Just a clean, effortless fit that actually works for real life. Come on. Forget overpriced designer brands. Ditch the disposable fast fashion. True Classic is built for comfort, built to last, and built to give back. You can grab them now at Target, Costco, or head over to trueclassic.com and use my promo code. That's the best way to get the best deals, is to use my promo code CONNECT, CONNECT, and get hooked up today. I love True Classic. I absolutely love True Classic. And like, for real, I practice what I preach, okay? I actually live and wear and breathe True Classic. So thank you for sponsoring us. Today's episode is sponsored by Ava. Ava is a credit building app that makes it super simple to improve your credit fast so you can get better rates on loans, pay off debt faster, and keep more money in your pocket. I recently was denied for a business loan because I had a less than superb credit score, and I didn't even know it. I thought it was great, but turns out I just simply didn't have enough of a credit history. You have to have a credit history, and Ava makes it super easy to build up that credit history. For just $6 a month, you could potentially save thousands. There's no credit check, there's no interest, and there's no fees. For example, one of the best features about Ava is that they report all of your on-time payments to all the major credit bureaus every day to help build positive credit history quickly. And that can include your rent payment every month, all of the subscriptions that you have. We live in a subscription-based world, so all of your payments that you pay out automatically anyways should be getting reported to credit agencies. That's good. That means you deserve better credit. And with Ava and with this tool, they can actually help you achieve that. Ava is the highest rated credit building app with thousands of 5-star reviews. It's the only credit building app rated excellent on Trustpilot and has an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau. Don't let your credit hold you back another day. Grow your credit fast with Ava. Download the Ava app, spelled AVA, today, and when you use my promo code CONNECT, you'll get your first month free. This offer is only for my listeners. Get the Ava app and use promo code CONNECT, CONNECT, to get your first month free. That's promo code CONNECT. Thanks to Ava, and now go and get yourself some good credit.
Okay, so this is a perfect opportunity to talk about your background and how you got into all this. Okay. Do you want to just bring us up to the moment that you got into it, from Salt Lake City to your companies to what made you jump into?
Yeah, I'm an oddball out. I never served in the military, never served in law enforcement. I've got really good friends in both, and a lot of my operators did. I always knew that I would fight in a war at some point from young age. And so in doing so, I didn't want to get shot. So I didn't want to get beat up.
Yeah, you're a businessman, dude. Yeah, you don't want to get killed.
I was like, okay, what do I do to fix this? How do I? So I've been training since I was very, very young on everything from edged weapons to hand-to-hand combat to improvised weapons to everything. And then even when I talk about this in my book, in Sound of Freedom, went on the making of an undercover operator. As I was building my investment fund, my business partner's like, Paul, why don't you take these investors golfing? I'm like, well, I suck at golf, right? But I'm shooting 50 cals every other weekend. I've got Krav Maga training at my dojo. I said, maybe I'll do activities like that. Right. So I would literally bring in, just to build relationships with these ultra high net worth families, I would curate these events where I would bring in Navy SEALs and Green Berets and Krav Maga experts, et cetera, that would train us and do some really freaking awesome training. So I would kind of meshed it into my relationship building, et cetera.
So you had the juice, you had the itch, you wanted some action.
Yeah.
You just didn't know how that was going to manifest.
Exactly. And so then years later, I was on the FBI Citizens Academy Board of Directors. I never joined any of the agencies at all, but I was on their board of directors, which was an outreach to influencers in the different communities. And in there, I had just won 40 under 40. It was the 40 most influential people under 40 years old in our area because of my success in my investment fund.
Right.
Well, there was a guy who had won that because he was Young Attorney of the Year for the entire nation. His name was Sean. And we met at that FBI Academy. He ended up becoming the Attorney General in our state. I helped to introduce some people and help to finance that. And so after he was the Attorney General, so he knew the training that I did with the FBI. He knew all of that other stuff. And after he was AG, he called me up. And he said, Paul, he said, I know that you have a passion for helping children. I was on a bunch of different board of directors for different child-related charities. I was on the Make-A-Wish board of directors in the area, a lot of different things. And he said, I know that your charity money goes to helping kids.
And you'd already exited your company by now, right?
No, I was active building it. I was right in the middle of building it. We had a few $1 billion in assets under management. Right. And I was, in fact, what was interesting, I had called him. This is funny. The whole story here. A year earlier, I had called him up. He was the AG. I said, "What's up, AG?" He says, "What's up, Hutch?" I said, "Hey, I got front row tickets to the Miss America pageant. Do you want to go?" He says, Hutch, unlike you, I have a reputation to uphold.
Yeah, that's creepy. Yeah, that's a creepy ask.
Miss America. I'm like, bro, it's not like that. I said, me and one of the founders of Yahoo, he and I his name is Troy. We had sponsored some kids that lost their dads in military battle. And we were having them crowned Miss America on stage by other Miss Americans. So it was a cool little charity thing. And the AG is like, oh, cool. Yeah, that's cool. I'll come to that. So we come out to that. And because it was a fallen soldier charity, the Pentagon had sent a representative down, a guy by the name of John. John was just kind of watching, being a part of it. After 4 days that we were there, we're sitting there at dinner. There's me, the AG. I've got multiple former Miss Americas that I had built relationships with. Right? This is kind of the energy I was in at the time. Right. I was ego and lust and greed and whatever. And John's sitting across from me. He was a CIA recruiter for 25 years, and now he was now in the Pentagon.
CIA recruiter.
Yeah,
that guy has dealt with some sketchy people.
Oh, for sure.
And I'm not calling you sketchy, but I'm saying if you read a history book, the CIA routinely deals with criminals, dictators, whatever advances American interests, quote unquote.
Absolutely. And he says to me, he said, Mr. Hutchinson, I've been watching you for the last 4 days, and I think your country could use your talents. And I'm like, well, what talents are those? My hot girls I've got around me. Is that what it is? He goes, he said, you are about 1 in 12 million from what we've seen. He said, you're a perfect chameleon. He said, I saw you in seconds break down the barrier of communication, become best friends with a billionaire, a bum on the street, or a runway model. Right. He said, imagine this. We fly you to Dubai, line you up with some dirty money guys. He said, you have the perfect backstory. You run a multi-billion-dollar investment fund. You become their best friends. You get all the information that we need. I line you up with some real billionaires to make it worth your time that'll invest in your fund with you. Well, when his guys called me a couple months later, I actually turned him down. I didn't want to put my life in danger for some white collar crime guys in Dubai, right? And plus my fund was doing great. We just hit $2 billion in assets under management, and I'd hired all these other guys and stuff. Yeah. Well, a year later, the Attorney General, who had been sitting next to me in that meeting, purportedly, I wasn't there at this meeting, but purportedly he was at a meeting with some guys that was a Homeland Security agent, some other operators that had identified some children in Cartagena, Colombia that they wanted to rescue. And he needed somebody who could play a part of a wealthy real estate investor who could handle himself undercover, who could, deal with things if a fight broke out, but could, kind of be a chameleon, so to speak, in that space. And there's a guy by the name of there was another guy that was there with him who knew me, Josh. And Josh, his dad ran for president years ago. There's some high level, whatever, political guys, right? And the AG says, well, have you ever met Paul Hutchinson, to this agent who was looking for this rich playboy who could play this part? And Josh said, oh, Paul would be perfect for this. And later I told him, I said, I don't think that's a compliment. You guys both think that I would be a good undercover pedophile. Right?
But yes.
Yes.
An excellent one. Now, why would the CIA or the FBI, Department of Homeland Security, don't they have undercover people in their on their payrolls, like that work for them? Why would they need you specifically?
Well, the thing to go to Dubai was because I was legitimately the founder of a multi-billion-dollar investment fund. And, you putting somebody in that position is harder than finding somebody who could play the role, and they do this all the time. They take regular guys who in regular positions who they think can play a role, and they'll put them in a position specifically to gather more information. They're somewhat more expendable, and everybody's all, oh yeah, I got to be able to work for a 3-letter agency.
Right.
Now, fast forward with the Homeland Security guy and the guys in Colombia.
Yeah.
This is a wholly different gig. This was not sanctioned by Homeland Security. He had identified these children. He was looking to get some financing from Homeland Security, and he was turned down.
Okay, so he needed money.
He needed money at first, yeah.
And who is this guy again?
He was a Homeland Security agent. He was a guy that Jim Caviezel plays in the movie that I choose not to say on air because we're not friends anymore.
Right. You guys can look him up. So this guy, he wants to, because I'm just trying to figure out the legality because we're dealing with different countries. So what kind of diplomatic relations you have to have and stuff like that. So it's a member of Homeland Security who wants to rescue these kids, but they're in Colombia. So is this also in cahoots with the Colombian authorities?
In every way. Every single mission that I did over a period of 10 years, those 70 missions, everyone except for the one that we did in Iraq and Syria, where the government was already up. So every other one that we did, we started with a meeting with either the head of the federal police or somebody next to the president or the president themselves. And we would say, listen, we will do all the work. We will pay for everything. We will give you all the credit. Your people are going to think you're heroes on this operation.
Right.
All we ask for is that the bad guys stay in jail for good. They don't get around your system. And number two, we have full access to the children, getting them rehabilitated and back to their families. And so that's exactly what was happening here is he already had connections with the federal police in Colombia. And he said, listen, we're going to be able to do a lot more good if we've got some white guys down here on the ground that are finding out where these kids are, et cetera.
And so you then extradite them immediately. They don't even stand trial in Colombia, or do they?
No, they do. The bad guys stay in jail in Colombia. We get arrested on those missions. The bad guys think that we were extradited to the U.S. to stand trial.
Well, the traffickers, they stay and do prison time in their home countries. What about, do you catch Westerners?
Yes.
Now, what happens with them?
They go to jail here. And here's what's super interesting about that. Back then, in the very beginning, 11 years ago, we would have to prove that the Westerner, while on U.S. soil, made plans to go to a third world country and have sex with a minor. Right. That's the laws we had. That's the only way that he could be breaking a law in the U.S. Otherwise, he would have to be tried and put into prison in that other country that he was in. Some of our people, including the AG, helped to change the laws here in the United States so that now you don't have to be doing anything here. You go anywhere in the world and you have sex with a 13-year-old anywhere in the world, even if you're saying, oh, it's legal there. It's not legal in the United States to go anywhere as an American and do those things. And you not only can get prosecuted in those countries, but the very second that you step foot in the United States, you can get prosecuted in the United States for that crime, which is amazing. Because they can't arrest you and put you in jail in the United States for robbing a bank in Switzerland, right? That's a Swiss law that you're breaking, not a U.S. law. But in this case, you're breaking U.S. law to go anywhere in the world. And
so you could go do prison time in Ecuador, get out after 10 years, and they ship you right to America, where you're going to do another, hopefully the rest of your life.
Exactly.
Wow. Okay, this all makes sense now. So you're working with the governments who give you permission, but this is shadowy. This is it tastes of black ops because it's financed with private money. In
every way, yeah.
Okay, so your first, I don't want to have you walk us through this full. People should go watch the movie because this is a centerpiece of Act 2 of the movie. The end of Act 2 is your first mission in Colombia. But could you just bullet point the success that you had?
Absolutely.
And how that launched you into another 70 missions?
So high level on that one, I get a call after I helped to finance some things. I get a call from one of the agents, says, can you be in Colombia in 2 days? And he said, we've identified over 100 children we can rescue, but I need your help. And ego me is like, well, how much do you need? He says, I need you. Can you be in Colombia in 2 days? He said, he had put together this plan because the trafficker had, and I told you earlier how he had a piece of property that he wanted to develop into a child resort, and he needed some funding for it. And so that was what the whole takedown was going to be, is I show up, pretend like I'm the financier for it.
Right.
Say you bring all of your children that you have right now. If I'm happy, I'll fund the project. Right. So go down there. They had brought 54 children to Cartagena, 3 separate cities at the same time. Over 120 children were rescued in one day. One of the largest operations in one day in history.
What was the age range?
Most of them were 11 to 18 years old. Of the ones that we were at in Cartagena.
And boys versus girls, how?
Majority of them were girls.
Okay.
There were 4 or 5 boys that were there, but the majority of them were young girls.
And the perpetrators, the people in this group, who were they?
Well, the
nationalities.
The traffickers were all Latino. There was a businessman. There was a woman who was a modeling queen, that had a modeling agency, et cetera. Now, a lot of times in a lot of our operations, we would say, listen, these guys, instead of life in prison, let them plea down to like 20 years in prison in exchange for the contact information and verification of Americans who have been down. And there have been hundreds and hundreds of Americans that the different foundations I was working with were able to gather that information, send it to the attorney generals in those states. And now, after we changed the law, if we could prove that they were engaging with a minor in those other countries, now in the United States, they could get taken down.
Okay, so they're flipping them.
Yeah.
They're flipping them and then getting Americans who are buying these kids.
Exactly.
And then there's this amazing story where, you guys are on an island off the coast of Cartagena, Colombia, and you've brought all the children. It's one of the most powerful scenes in movies in general. I really believe that. I'm a movie buff, so I want people to go watch it, but it's incredible.
Well, and I'll tell you some behind the scenes stuff of what really happened that I didn't tell on some other interviews. So in the movie, we have only half the boat coming, and then they had to delay until the other boat came. Right. In real life, all 54 kids were brought at the same time, including the little girl named Rocio. We named her after my ex-wife, right? Wow. So she was there on this along with the rest of them. The jungle was in a totally different country, a different team, et cetera. However, the delay that happened was where we got so much intel on where these trafficking rings, how they were operating. Because what happened was this: the traffickers have brought these 54 kids. We're sitting there at this table. We get enough information where we have undercover cameras that are all around that are capturing it. So these guys can't say, oh, I thought these kids were at a pool party. Right, no, you said on camera that this is why they were here, et cetera, et cetera. Right. Well, then once we have the information to put them away for good, then we order tequila. Once we order tequila, the waiter goes in, he radios, and within 3 or 4 minutes, the CTI, the Colombian federal agents, were supposed to come and storm the party and arrest everybody. Right. So we ordered tequila. 1 or 2 minutes pass, we got the tequila coming out, nobody's rushing the island. All of a sudden, one of the traffickers says, okay, time for the party. Because ordering tequila is a stupid move on our part, because the traffickers are thinking it's time for the party to start, right? So one of them opens up the cocaine, a couple of them get up and they go in the house where the children are.
And they're giving coke to the kids, right?
Yeah, they were given some of the kids. There's an 11-year-old boy taken from Haiti that they gave cocaine that morning because he was so scared it was going to hurt. What kind of up monster thinks that that's attractive? So he's got this cocaine out. These guys come, they're thinking this party's ready to start. They come out and they've got these 4 little kids, 4 virgins. And one of them was 11. Actually, two of them were 11. One, the little boy was 11. The little girl, the same one he showed me on a picture a few weeks before, standing in front of me with tear stains on her face. And I'm like, what the hell? This can't happen. You know, where's the agents? Why haven't they come yet? Right? And so I said, guys, here's the deal. We start doing the cocaine. You bring out these kids. I'm going to have a really good time, but I'm going to be pretty f***ed up for a few days. And you've already proven to me that you could fulfill your end of the bargain. You showed up with all of these children that are going to be for this sex hotel that you're doing. Why don't we do this? Let's do it. Let's do a business plan. I was trying to delay, right? So I said, somebody bring me a pen and a paper and whatnot. So I had negotiated hundreds of business plans in my career. So I knew how to, make, where's your supply?
You knew the right questions to ask.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we have this piece of paper and I start out with, okay, where are you going to build this and what's it going to look like? And I'm drawing out, I'm thinking, where the hell are the agents? Why haven't they, we can't delay this forever. And then I started asking them, I said, well, tell me this, tell me about your customer. Where are you getting them? What are you going to charge them? This is where we found out that these guys were going to charge $100,000 per person as a membership fee. And then they were going to charge additional money for extra services from some of the kids. Right. So I'm writing all this stuff down. And where are you getting are you doing advertise for them? No, they're all over Colombia. We have guys in these different cities that are going to be able to connect with these wealthy guys here and these networks and stuff. And so I'm writing all this down as this business plan. And then I'm like, okay, well, still the agents haven't come. I need to ask more questions. So now I said, well, tell me about the product. Now, when the product is children, the conversation gets really dark.
Yeah.
And so I said, okay, well, tell me, what does it cost? What does it cost for a little girl from Ecuador, a little girl from Colombia? What does it cost? $2,500 to be able to groom her and get her into the place and get her ready. And I said, well, what about an American girl or an American boy? Well, now it's going to be $25,000.
But they were confident that they could actually kidnap from America and get them down to Colombia?
Absolutely.
Holy.
Absolutely. So, and again, the kids that they were getting, it's a lot easier for them to pull a kid from a foster care program or a runaway so that they don't end up having the authorities after them.
But they had, right, that makes sense.
There's a huge percentage of kids in the foster care program in the United States that go missing and they wipe the records.
Nobody ever talks about that.
Yeah.
The kids taken from America.
Absolutely. And so they $25,000 for this, and I'm like, okay, and still the agents aren't there. And the conversation's getting out. Now I'm like, okay, now I understand where your customer is. I understand the product. Now let's talk about your revenue. You're charging me this much for each one of the kids that are here, and I'm writing all those numbers down. And then I said, what about what they called the 0 kilometer miles virgins, right? I said, you guys are charging me $2,000 for that one. You're charging me a little bit more for that one because she's a little bit younger. I says, is that really what you normally charge? Or you just charge me that because you think I've got money? He goes, oh no, Jefe, that's what we always charge. I said, okay. I said, and then as soon as they're not at 0 kilometers anymore, what does the price go down to? This was the hardest part of the whole conversation. The female trafficker said, oh, we can rent them out as a virgin more than once. I said, well, how does that happen? She said, well, if we're making between $2,000 and $5,000 for their first time, she said it only costs $200 to sew back their hymen. Oof. At this point, I thought, what the?
Yeah, I mean, you just want to kill these people on the spot.
I thought, but it helped me understand how dark this is.
Yeah.
Not only that they were so removed from any degree of empathy,
right,
where they would say that, but what about the doctors that perform this on a child? Right. At that point, I couldn't even breathe. I'm like, I said, Okay. And they could tell I was super uncomfortable with that.
Yeah.
And so immediately they changed the subject and started talking
Right.
about how much money I could earn from this project, et cetera.
Well, can you imagine they were so confident. I mean, these seemed like serious business people.
Yeah.
They were like, we can charge $100,000 a year just as a membership. They were confident that they could do that. Did they give you an idea of how many members like their goal was in a year?
His numbers penciled out to over $10 million a year profit from his whole operation.
Okay. So that's just say 100 people
that's
on the
100
low
guys.
end, 100 members.
Yep.
All Americans or Europeans.
Yep.
Has to be. Can you imagine if you had not brought them down that day? And the thread, I mean, thank God you did, right? You have to. This is not drug dealing. You can't, the DEA allows drug traffickers to operate for years while they build a bigger case. But the thread, if you had pulled on that, the dragnet, the men you would have found paying that membership fee. Can you tell us how high up in the course of doing 70 missions, how high that went?
I will say this, then the highest that we were able to go was to federal judges. We took down 4 federal judges on one of our operations.
4 federal judges.
And
what country?
This was in Haiti. Was in Haiti. There's a lot of Americans that will travel over to Dominican Republic or Haiti. It's super close to the East Coast, and there's a lot of trafficking from the Caribbean that goes through there.
Right.
And however, I have a lot of intel from some high-level military intelligence guys and guys that I've worked with in these operations who can very confidently verify that the problem goes right to the top in our country. Even the Jeffrey Epstein situation. We sit back and think that Jeffrey Epstein was this billionaire playboy who just had a sick fetish. No, I truly believe that Jeffrey Epstein was a pawn. He wasn't the king. He was a pawn to something far bigger, far darker than any of us want to imagine, wherein the blackmail that exists within 3-letter agencies in the United States and similar agencies in
England,
Israel and England
are M6 and
the Mossad. Yep.
Right.
In every way have been for a long time very involved in blackmail. If you want to control the vote of a senator, of a congressman, of a federal judge, you want to control their vote forever, you get them on film with a 12-year-old on an island or on a jet, you control it forever. Now, here's the thing. It's not just getting them drunk and getting them high and then all of a sudden they do something stupid. A lot of them, it is by choice. And this happens within Hollywood as well, wherein, okay, you have these aspirations to become this famous person, this powerful person. We will ensure that you get there, but we need some controls upon you. And so those controls, this is what it looks like. You're going to be a part of us. This is what we do. We're involved in these ritualistic things. And in doing so, we're going to capture it on film and you're going to be okay with it. But as part of that, now we know and you know that you can be controlled and we can take you right to the top.
Sexual blackmail goes back as far as the CIA goes back. After World War II, Roy Cohn was a famous New York City attorney, and he was a CIA asset. He was a homosexual. They used to do it with homosexuality back when being gay was the biggest taboo. Like, hey, we've got you on film with a man. This is going to ruin you. But now that it's okay to be gay, now that homosexuality is essentially accepted almost everywhere in the world, we don't even give it a thought anymore. They need to use a different kind of blackmail.
Exactly.
And, with this growing demand, you kind of see how there's a confluence of that, of sex trafficking, blackmail.
You can see it in your political leaders. they all come into their positions with all of this energy that they're going to fix this, and they're going to be super strong on these specific agendas. And you can tell when they've been compromised.
Well, look, we all know that the Israel lobby, just watch the interview with Ted Cruz and Tucker Carlson. They're all compromised. We kind of all know that. The question, and that because I don't know for certain, you know, it's obviously big internet clickbait to like say, hey, look, the Epstein scandal. I don't know for certain that a guy like Ted Cruz at that level has sexual appetites that are going to put him on an island with Jeffrey Epstein. Like, we need more. Do we need more proof? I don't know if this goes off topic or not. Like, do we have anything as concrete as like you taking down the 4 federal judges in Haiti? Do we have any of that stateside?
No. And here's why. Yes, it's there, but are we going to see it? No, because it doesn't matter whether the right or the left is in office. It's a level of control that is incredibly valuable to them. Right? So would you rather have, if you were in a power position, would you rather maintain that level of control of whatever pawns that are out there? Or would you rather them go to jail and now you have to corrupt somebody else to be able to control them?
Right. Well, look at the FBI. They're not releasing the Epstein files.
And the ones that we are seeing are incredibly redacted. There's terabytes and terabytes. In fact, that, you know, they say 14 terabytes. No, there's hundreds and hundreds of terabytes of videos that are there that we will never see because of how powerful the people are that are on those videos. So either they're like, listen, you know, I will play your game, whatever you want to play. You know, and here's the sad thing. If we think that the people who are running our country are really running our country, then I got a bridge in Brooklyn to sell you.
Right.
You know, they're not.
Right.
We sit here and think, oh, my guy got in. Your guy didn't get in.
Yeah.
There's guys that are already in that have been in forever.
Yeah.
That are really running the show.
Yeah. Yeah. The solution, and I think we could both agree, the solution is fixing the people who lust after this sort of thing.
Absolutely. I realized after 10 years,
it's fixing the drug addict.
Pulling the kids out of hell was never going to fix it. We need to pull the hell out of humanity in order to fix it. That's the only solution. How do we heal humanity so that we're not playing in this energy of greed and lust and envy and hate and division, all of this stuff? I realized after my first undercover mission, I thought that I was going to see, you know, earrings in their noses and tattoos on their necks. No, they were businessmen. Wow. They were well-spoken. They looked like you and I. And over years, the thing that I realized is that the common thread was arrogance, greed, and lust. And I had to look in the mirror. After a few years of undercover work, and I was damn good. Why? Because I was filled with arrogance, greed, and lust. Mm-hmm. And this is what these guys were looking for, is this low frequency energy that was jiving with what they were doing. I wasn't doing anything illegal. I'd never done anything with a child. I was rescuing these children. But the problem is that kind of, that's what's in this world. And
well, you were almost like a cliche. You were this rich playboy, and you were completely empty.
Yeah. In every way as empty. I was my second marriage, headed for a divorce. My kids didn't talk to me. I'm like thinking that another helicopter, another jet was going to make me happy. Right. Nothing was making me happy. And so I'm, out there doing this, I'm playing in this darkness. But the problem is that it added to my own ego problem.
That was another addiction.
It was
these missions.
Addiction to money, addiction to sex, and now I'm doing these undercover missions. Now I've got the coolest panty dropper story on the planet, right? Now I can whoever I want to, because now I'm a child rescuer and I'm rich, right? And it was so heavy, the energy on everything that I was doing, that I looked in the mirror and I said, Paul, if arrogance, greed, and lust is what's driving this industry, how have those things showed up in your life? How have they showed up in your relationships with your family, with your kids, with your employees? How is this, and how are you contributing to it? People will leave sound of freedom, and they'll say, "Oh, I want to do something. I want to go rescue kids." Well, the worst thing you can do is go to Mexico and try to go undercover. You're gonna get arrested. You're probably gonna get shot.
Yeah.
Right. The best thing you can do is go home and hug your kids, have a healthy relationship with them, so they can tell you when something's off. And the best thing you can do is look in the mirror. People are like, "Look in the mirror. I'm not contributing to this." Yeah, we all are. We all are. Here's why. I call it tension transfer. Right? Pretend you go to work, you yell at your employee, he goes home, yells at his wife yells at the kid
Right.
kicks the dog. Literally, that kicking of that dog came from you because you were out of alignment at work.
That's right.
Now let's just pretend like that guy at work. What you didn't know is that he had been as a child himself. Let's say that led to some really heavy energy. Let's say he was addicted to drugs when he was younger, doing some other things. Let's say he got addicted to. And just like what we talked about earlier, where he starts going down a dark, dark road with that. Let's say that his has gone to the point where now he's fantasizing about with it, right? And let's say he's also addicted to alcohol. His wife leaves him because of it. And you yelling at him at work. He goes home, gets drunk. And this is the weekend that he gets his 12-year-old daughter and her little cousin that's coming to stay. Now that tension transfer from you didn't kick a dog. Right. Now that tension transfer from you abused it. Yeah. We all have to look in the mirror. All of us have to look in the mirror and say, okay, how am I showing up? How am I showing up in my relationships? How I love the story of the guy on a couch. He's sitting there reading the newspaper, and his little boy comes in and says, "Daddy, I want to play baseball." He says, No, I'm busy right now. He's okay. Comes back a few minutes later. "Dad, you have time now?" No, I'm busy. And he turns the page of the newspaper and he sees this map of the world. He tears it out, tears it into little pieces of paper, throws it on the ground, says, "You know what? You need to learn your geography. You tape together all of the map, every single country where it's supposed to be, and then I'll play ball with you." Well, a few minutes later, the little boy comes back and the map is perfect. And the man's like, "What, your mom help you with that?" He goes, No. He turns it over. He says, "There was a picture of a man on the other side. I just put the man together and the whole world came together."
Yeah.
That's the answer to the riddle right there. Is we all have to look in the mirror and say, how am I showing up?
Right.
How is my arrogance, greed, and lust affecting my relationships? How is my being in an anger state out of integrity? How's that affecting my employees? How's that ripple effect?
Absolutely. God, it's so hard sometimes, but it's such the answer. It's mathematics. If everybody changes themselves, then the world thus naturally upgrades to a higher frequency.
We only have to have everybody do it. Here's the deal. Let's say that you take a year to work on your right? Let's say, you know what? I've got addictions, I've got anger issues, I'm lashing out, I'm, abusing my kids verbally, which probably makes them low self-esteem, so they're more likely to be abused by a neighbor, whatever it is, right? You say, okay, I'm going to focus a year on fixing that man in the mirror, right? And then let's say that you take an entire year and mentor 2 more people to help get them through that. And let's say that next year they pass it on and simply help 2 more. Do you realize in a matter of about 32, 33 years, we've hit the entire global population of the world with over 8 billion people?
Wow.
Unbelievable. So that's all we have to do is just pass on that ripple effect of our actions.
Do you think that sex offenders can be rehabilitated, should be allowed out of prison? I mean, look, a lot of them do get out of prison. You do more time for high-level drug trafficking than you do for abuse many times, even in this country. Yeah. What are your thoughts on that? Nobody wants to talk about it.
Nobody does. I told my operators many times, I said, listen, it's not our job to judge. That's God's job. But if we have to arrange that meeting,
for sure,
and that's okay. Sure. Let's just end it right now.
Let's say, okay, you lifted that quote from somebody. That's a screenwriter's line. That's
right. We want to arrange that meeting somewhere. That's all good. I'm fine with that.
Right.
And so
what do you think the ones that you didn't kill?
People. Somebody asked me once. He said, Paul, if you were in a room and you had 100 traffickers, and you had the option, you could either have a gun with no retribution, you just take care of whatever you needed to, or you could have a microphone and they would have to listen to you for however long it took. What would you take? I would take that microphone. I would take them to the pit of hell. I would share with them in firsthand experience the pain of the children, the pain of the families that they destroyed because of their addictions, because of their lust, because of their wanting money, whatever it was. I would take them to hell. I would make every one of them cry. Mm-hmm. Now, they would still go to jail. I put my life in danger hundreds of times to ensure that they never hurt innocents again. However, the thing that I wish the most on all these operations is that I had a time machine or something. I could go back 10 or 20 years before these kids ever were hurt.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't be just pulling the kids out of hell. I would sit down with this guy or this woman and say, what is going on in your life that makes you think that in any way it's okay to cross that line, to go down that road, to hurt a child?
Well, did you have an opportunity to talk to some of these Johns that you arrested?
We talked to a lot of them. Okay. And I realized they all came from this world of hardship or energy, or they were as children themselves, and now they just thought it was okay. But
so they didn't roll out of bed. You know, some guys are into black chicks, some guys are into fat chicks. We're into Colombian chicks. Some people like skinny chicks. You like what you kind of attracted just biologically to what you're attracted to.
Yeah.
Is the same way?
I really don't think so. I think that if every was that had been abused got the love, the help, the healing that they needed before, in their adolescent years, before they were adult, before they grew up and had kids of their own, if they got that help that they needed to release all of that negative tension, I believe that alone would fix the problem. Wow. That, together with fixing this in the propaganda of Hollywood, that's slowly moving us to the point that you know, it's not a pedophile, it's a minor attracted adult. What, are you kidding me?
It's crazy.
No. And so yes, I believe that a huge percent of it comes from unresolved trauma.
Did you ever have to kill people in these missions, or your operators? Or the better question, because you guys had armed support, you guys had backup from the local cops, I would assume.
Yeah, well, the local cops, half the time the local cops were dirty. You know, we couldn't trust them. In fact, I had some really close calls with dirty local cops. Some of the most dangerous missions that I did were ones where we got arrested by local cops that were working with the traffickers. Wow. So I had one in Tijuana. This was one where we had this was the escaped convict that had been working for well over a decade, that were trafficking these kids. Well, when we go into a city, we build a relationship with one of the traffickers, but then we want to make sure we identify all of them, because if we just take down one, then boom, it's going to pop back up immediately. So we're like, oh, how do we fix this? We're going to take down all of the trafficking in that area. So
and real quick, sorry to cut you off. How many people are in your group?
We had, in this one, we had 4 of us.
There's only 4 of you guys.
Yeah, 4 of us that were undercover. Yeah. We had we had a lot of support outside of that. I had the head of the federal police, and we had that. But on this one, we don't, none of the local cops know that we're even there. It's too dangerous to have that. Yeah. So we've got top level authority from the head of the federal police and usually the president, et cetera, that knows that we're there. But when we're deep cover, we're there just building relationships with whoever we need to. And so we had identified this other trafficker that was known for selling kids in the area, that had a hotel that was known in the area for a place you can buy him. So we were waiting for him. We were with one of his henchmen guys, and we were waiting for him to show up with he had a 9-year-old and an 11-year-old, so we could verify that he had what our boss wanted for our party, right? We were sitting in this place, and one of our operators was a double black belt Krav Maga expert, just badass. I mean, he'd kill everybody with his left hand. And he's like, bro, he says, we're in a really dangerous place. There's no way out the back. We've got to go out front. We can't be in the hotel waiting for him, right? Yeah. So we go out in front, and this cop car drives up, and this officer, he goes, what are you guys doing? We're just hanging here. Now, this is Tijuana. Tijuana has at the time had the highest murder capital rate in the world,
Very dangerous place.
We are 2 a.m. in the most dangerous area of Tijuana, in front of a motel owned by a trafficker, waiting for him to show up with some other inventory, right? And so we're sitting there with 4 of us sitting there. I think it was 5 of us. And he's like, what are you guys doing? We're just chilling. Can I give you a ride? No, we're just waiting for our Uber. Yeah, right. 5 white guys in that area of town. So he goes around the corner, and then all of a sudden, boom, we got like 7 officers, full automatic weapons on the ground. And we're like, oh. So we're getting handcuffed. Now, we were only there like 24 hours. We hadn't really identified a lot more than just the contact information of that felon, that escaped felon, right? So boom, we're getting handcuffed. We get put in the police car, and there's guys, my other operators in the other 2 police cars, and I'm in the front one. I'm handcuffed to one of my operators. And the police officer, he said, this is really bad for you. I can make it all go away. It's going to cost you like $50,000 if you go to prison and just to buy your way out. He says, or I can have it all go away right now for $10,000.
Yeah.
And he says, but I can give it to my guys on the ground and whatever. Now, we had found out later that the other trafficker, that escaped convict, was mad that we were connecting with another one. So he had talked to his friend who was the head of the local police
Cops
and
on
said,
payroll.
listen, I'll just split this with you. You know, let's get some more cash from these guys and whatever.
Right.
And so I'm like, we'll think about that. And he says, give me your phone. Hand me your phone. And I still have my phone on me. I was surprised I still had it after we were handcuffed. So I pull up my phone and I give it to him, and he says, unlock it. I said, you know what? I need to call my attorney. He said, you don't get an attorney. You don't even get a phone call. He said, you're in Mexico. Yeah. He said, see that's a Mexican jail. How about this? I leave you in that Mexican jail. I leave you there for 4 or 5 days, and then you can decide if you want to unlock your phone for me.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, yeah, whatever. So I unlock my phone. He's like, show me where's your.
He just went straight to.
That's what he said. As soon as because he was trying to prove that we were there looking for kids because he had talked to this other trafficker.
Okay, so he knew who you guys were already.
Yeah,
all right. So he's looking for anything to try to pin you with
so
a sex
the
case.
money.
Wow, right.
Yeah, and that's what it was all about. It was all about just extorting us
Yeah.
for money right there on the spot, because he had been told by this other trafficker that he was working with that that's what we were looking for. So he's like, show me where's your. I said, I don't look. He said, you're looking for a sex party with kids. Of course you're looking. So he goes through my web history. Of course there's nothing. He's going through my pictures. And then there's a folder in there that says Cancun. Now this is my burner phone, but in Cancun, we had just done an operation where we had rescued a whole bunch of kids. And, but my burner phone just had the pictures and my communication with the traffickers on the kids. So it looked like I was so he opens up this folder and it has a bunch of pictures of kids. Now they're fully clothed, but they're obviously 10, 11 years old, right? He goes, oh, this is all I need. You're going to prison for good for this. He's trying to get me to pay the extra money, right? And at this point, my operator is next to me. He's like, you think we should blow our cover? I says, I don't know. I says, sir, why don't you open up that next folder right there? He opens up the next one. I said, zoom into that picture. I said, that's me with all my other operators. And those are all the top federal police in Mexico. They're all posing behind us.
Nice.
He's looking at it. I says, click that next picture. I says, that's me with President Vicente Fox. I'm in his office on the red phone. I just trumped everything for him.
Yeah.
I don't care if he's a good cop or a bad cop. I got a picture of me and the president. Right?
Outranked him.
I said, I help your country find kidnapped children. He stops the car just right there, gets out, unhandcuffs the other car, unhandcuffs. He's like, can we drive you? Because he just asked me for a bribe. Right. I said, no, I think we're good. We don't want him taking us there. So we go back to the hotel. The head of federal police called me. He says, you guys have blown your cover completely. You got to get out of there. Mm-hmm. So, we went to another city. But the scariest moment for me from that operation happened like 2 months later. I get a knock on my door. Boom, boom, boom on my door. And I'm in my house. I've got a fully gated community, right? I've got this beautiful home. I've got, at this time I was living high on the hog, right? I've got 10 bathrooms in my house, 8 private suites, a basketball court in my basement, all this, right? Very, very, very secure home. And I knock this knock, boom, boom, boom on my door. I'm like, well, that's pretty scary because nobody gets in without me knowing, right? I open up the door and I see a man standing there. And he said, I'm looking for Paul Stone. Now, Paul Stone was my undercover name. Nobody knew that name. And I'm like, And I could see a glimpse of a gun right down here. And so I'm like, okay, I need to be able to deal with whatever's going to happen next. I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, are you Paul Hutchinson, AKA Paul Stone? I'm like, who's asking? And he pulls out an envelope, FBI on the outside of it. Boom. It's a subpoena for a grand jury in Southern California. And I'm like, and he, no answer, nothing, not one more word, just hands it to me and turns around and leaves. I'm like, my heart's beating. I'm like, what the hell did I get myself into? You know, I've got a grand jury for the FBI. I call it my attorney and I send him pictures of it. And I said, can you handle this? Can you find out what's going on? He calls me like 5 minutes later. He's laughing. I said, I don't know what you're laughing about. I've got it subpoenaed to a grand jury. He says, here's what happened. He says, you remember that guy in Tijuana who was an escaped convict that you had to blow the mission really quick? He said the FBI, because when you told the federal police about what had happened there, they had turned it in the FBI. The FBI did a whole sting and took him down. And when they got his phone, now evidently there wasn't any communication between the head of the federal police in Mexico when they turned over the case and whatnot. So the FBI takes him down, gets a subpoena on his phone, finds out that he's been texting back and forth to this Paul Stone guy, right? Now I was really careful. I logged in using a VPN every time I went online. I mean, there was no way that anybody could ever find out the real me because I didn't know how high level these trafficking networks were. Yeah. Well, when the FBI got the subpoena, they also went into his Gmail and he was back and forth some emails from my Gmail and from my Paul Stone Gmail. And there was one email that I forwarded to a guy by the name of, he was former CIA for about 14 years. His name was Matt. And so they evidently went to Matt, says, what's going on? Because the FBI, he said the FBI thought that they had caught a really big fish, right? They get into this Paul Stone and they see all of this stuff. Paul Stone is communicating with traffickers in Thailand and Haiti and Dominican Republic and all over. So the FBI thought that they got this really big fish. Well, when they go into Matt, because I had forwarded one of those emails to Matt, he's like, oh, well, Paul Stone is one of our operatives for some of our foundations we're working with. And so then I get the knock on the door. So it scared the shit out of me.
So they extradited that guy?
Yeah.
They arrested him down there and they extradited him. How often did you have to go to court after they would arrest these people? Did you ever have to go to court in foreign countries? Or
I always sent all of my texts, all of my videos from undercover things. I sent that all to the federal police in whatever country we're working with, and we let them handle all of it.
Okay, so you never had to go in and did you know the adjudication? Did these people get life?
Most of them got life in prison. Okay, and like I say, we let them plea down to 20, 25 years, which is life there. I mean, you go to prison in the U.S., they're going to separate from the drug dealers. In Latin America, they don't, and they get every day, you know,
or brutally murdered unless they have a lot of money though. Yeah. Because if you have money, that kind of trumps everything. So,
well, and again, the only reason we let them plead down is if they give us the information on the U.S. guys who have been down there so that we can get those guys.
Okay. So, and then would you arrest those guys? Would you put cases on those guys stateside? Like how would you handle that?
I wasn't involved on any of that.
Okay.
You know, we had guys in law enforcement that we worked with that were handling all of that. But yeah, they would take them downstate. So this is one of the reasons why they worked so hard to change the laws. Yeah. Because in the beginning, we could get all this intel from these guys and that in US law, they had to be prosecuted in Mexico, in Colombia, and Thailand, that we couldn't prosecute them there, even if we could prove that they were down there doing that. So by changing that law, now as soon as we got that information, we could prosecute them here in the US.
Yeah, makes sense. That makes sense. What do you think the most active country is? Like where this problem is the worst. I mean, it's bad everywhere.
It's bad everywhere.
Where do you think
Colombia used to be bad in the U.S., but it's gotten way, way better in terms of trafficking.
Colombia has.
Yeah. Okay. Because of the fact that we filmed the movie there, it created global awareness there. They've cleaned up a lot there. The Southeast Asia is super bad. Thailand, there is so many children, millions of who are in trafficking in Thailand. And sadly, in Thailand, a lot of the parents are involved. Yeah. You know, they
selling their kids.
They are. We had one just a few months ago where the mom and dad realized that the 10-year-old could make more money than they could if they were working. And so mom and dad that was their retirement. They're sitting at home doing nothing, letting their 10-year-old get so that they could pay all their bills.
how do you explain that? Like, it's just poverty? Is that the only explanation for that? I don't accept that.
I don't at all. Yeah. And
I mean, it is definitely plays a factor in the risks that a lot of these people take. I mean, if you're hungry, if your belly is aching every day, you could probably compartmentalize a lot of that. But to give up your own child,
and their mind is not giving it up. Understand this. I had a business partner who he was there in Thailand, and this family was heading to the city, and on the way to the city, they stopped at a and let the dad get out. They were going to pick him up on the way back. This is the wife and the daughters that were there saying, okay, go have sex is a different mindset.
Right. Culturally, it's much more, it's so different. I don't know. How would you describe the sex in a place like Thailand? It's like a chore.
It is. And it's so, there's no moral restrictions at all anywhere. You have these what they call lady boys, or the boys will dress up like girls. They look like hot American models. They're in Thailand, and it happens all the time there because it's just a different mindset.
It's a breakdown of morality.
Yeah, and so
it's the complete opposite. Isn't that interesting? So you have that extreme, and then you have the extreme of like the Orthodox religious communities that cause a lot of people to go do these sadistic things, right?
So here's the hard discussion.
It's like you
ready to compare this?
Yeah, dude. Lay it on me.
Here's the thing. Would you rather? Let's just put this in two places, okay? Would you rather be that little girl whose mom and dad kiss them and love them every day and play with them in the evenings, that would go out and having sex every single day with strangers? Or would you rather be a little girl here in the United States in an Orthodox family where your grandpa is you, where you are told that sex is dirty, sex is bad, sex is evil, and you are not to tell anybody about it because of the fact that everybody's going to hate you and shun you for it? Yeah. Or again, in this conservative situation where you've got you're being abused by your uncle, or even your parents are selling you and stuff like that, and you're in this culture that you think that you are evil, that you think that you are dirty in every way. I'm not advocating what's happening in Thailand in any way. In my opinion, the very second that any child is put in a position where their innocence is taken from them in that way, this is evil and needs to be dealt with. However, we I believe have even a bigger problem in the United States. They say that the favorite pastime of the American male is abuse. And it's happening everywhere. The fact that more than half the women have been abused sometime in their life. Then I guarantee that there are men in your inner circle who have been those perpetrators.
Well, they say that's why what's the big case right now? The Eric and Lyle Menendez. If you've heard about the Menendez case. None of the men on the jury would vote innocent or manslaughter, because there's no way that boys were getting molested. It was such a stigma for time immemorial, right? I just think in a place like Thailand, I agree with you. If prostitution was regulated and really, really you had strong institutions making sure that bad actors were kept out, that's great. But I think there's like a middle ground, because it's kind of like Portland, Oregon, where I'm from. They said, we're gonna pull the rug from under the cartels, and we're gonna make small quantities of drugs just completely legal. And now it's a hellscape when you go to certain parts of downtown, right? You make it easier for bad actors, people that want to come by in Thailand. You make it, hey, it's an open air market for that. So I agree with you, though. The repression is what makes the buyer. And the loose, lax morality of a place like Colombia, even, which is a victim of their own success because they're so beautiful. You know what I mean? That's what makes the conditions that allow these predators from the West to come do that. Does that make sense?
The real key is to solve for the predator problem.
Yeah.
Right?
You're right.
Because we as human nature, we have a problem with authority. Most of us do, right?
Yeah.
In some way. And so the more repressed we are, the more that we want to rebel from that repression, the more conditions and laws that are put on us that some people, I'm going to walk the line because of that. But there are a lot that will push the envelope on that. The real key is not how do we pull the kids out of hell? How do we pull the hell out of humanity? How do we help each of us heal so that we're not in a position where we're abusing another person, where we're not acting out of integrity within our interpersonal relationships, where we're not abusing it, right? Where does that come from? And if we can fix that, we save millions of children. That's really the key. If there wasn't a demand of anybody going over to Thailand and being with an 8-year-old, a 10-year-old, if there wasn't that demand there, then the parents would be working a job instead of prostituting their child.
Yeah.
Right? So that's really the key.
Yeah.
We've got to take away the demand. We've got to heal humanity, or we'll never fix the trafficking problem.
1,000%. Couldn't agree more. What about your journey? So you're getting a thrill. These are thrilling missions, I would assume. Almost like another addiction that you've added to, your Playboy.
My plethora of addictions.
Right. Were you into drugs at all?
Nope.
Alcohol?
Never alcohol and drugs, but for sure money and sex.
And sex, right? And what was it? What mission was it that made you say, you know what? I don't want to do this anymore? Or when you said, I got to look at the man in the mirror.
I'm going to take you down a road that's somewhat controversial, but I'm very passionate about this because it changed everything for me and many of my operators. So about 3-4 years into my undercover work, I wasn't Paul Hutchinson. I was Paul Hutchinson, right? I had built a massive company. I had a massive house. I had 2 helicopters. I had a plane. I had all this crap, right? I had 150 half-dressed women at my house. I had a basketball court in my basement with a stage on the side of it with stripper poles on my stage.
You're like the Mormon Tony Sparks.
I was.
Tony Starks.
I was, but I was a playboy that, and my parents still don't know that I had a stripper poles in my basement.
Yeah, hopefully they don't.
So, but that's where I was at. And at the time we were blowing through undercover operators. I had Green Berets with 300 missions in Afghanistan who already had PTSD from seeing what they saw in war. That one undercover mission with me saving kids, seeing a menu with faces, bodies, and the menu of these are the different services and what they would cost. It screwed them up. They're like, I'm done. I can't deal with this. So I had a lot of operators that 1 or 2 missions, they were like, I can't deal with this energy anymore. So I had 2 guys, Andy and Jimmy, who Andy had done 22 missions with me. Jimmy had done 13. They were both there when we got arrested in Tijuana, on the side of the street, everything.
Yeah.
So they had been in all of those things. And they called me up on a joint call together and they said, Paul, do you trust us? And I said, yeah, I literally trust you with my life, doing we do. I'm in charge of talking. They're in charge of making sure I don't die.
Yeah.
And they said, you need to come to this healing retreat with us. I said, I don't need to heal. I'm Paul Hutchinson. Everybody wants to be me. They're like, no, you're in your second marriage, headed for a divorce. Your kids don't talk to you. Yeah. You think that you're going to get fulfillment from another car, another plane, another party, another girl. And they said, this will be the most transformational experience of your life. Now, I told them that's saying something. I know Tony Robbins personally. I've literally walked across coals with him next to me. I've done transformational right? You can't tell me this is going to be the most transformational thing of your life, And then they said, this doctor has identified ways to help people overcome anxiety, depression, PTSD, addictions, childhood trauma, help them overcome it in a matter of days. And then I said, no, I'm calling on that because my company in my early 20s that I sold, we had 50,000 people a month calling in off of an infomercial to get help with anxiety and depression and PTSD and addictions. That's what I did. I know this stuff. You can't do it in days. It takes years to overcome some of these traumas. And we had a cognitive restructuring program that helped people change the negative habit patterns of thought, creating their problems. And so I called BS on that. And then they dropped the real no for me. They said she's using some different types of psychedelics to do so. I'm like, what the hell? I said, those are Schedule I drugs. They're, I grew up Mormon. We couldn't, coffee, tea, alcohol, tobacco. You go to jail. You go to not to jail. You go to hell.
Mormon jail.
For any of them, right?
Yeah.
Be kicked out of any of those things. So any mind altering things whatsoever were completely off limits. And so then I started doing some research on it and realized that not only was psilocybin not as dangerous as cocaine, it was actually safer than table sugar.
Oh yeah.
There's never been a case of addiction, never been a case
Never.
of overdose. Now, the science behind it is what we call neuroplasticity. So when we're kids, when we're 0 to maybe 9, 10 years old, our brain is in a hyper neuroplasticity state where we can learn 2 or 3 languages at the same time. We're very, very impressionable, right? And if some happens, if our uncle this, if our dad yells at whatever, then it gets buried in our subconscious mind. And 95% of our life is run by our subconscious. After 9 or 10 years old, that subconscious gets kind of like concrete. It's super hard. And to get something new in there, it takes 21 days of consistency to create a new habit. But even then, we're driving our car, that habit of our subconscious is driving our life. Well, if there are things that are stuck down there that are creating anxiety and depression, anger issues, addictions, all of these things, most of them, we're trying to fight the addiction as if it's a symptom. It's not the cause of it. The cause is our subconscious and what's going on there. Well, the psilocybin creates a temporary state of hyperneuroplasticity. Right? Yep. Now, this is super important. For me, I went to this because I trusted them. And Johnny, this was the most transformational weekend of my entire life. It was the most beautiful, horrific experience I've ever had. Horrific because I felt what you would call pure empathy. I felt emotionally attached as if I was them. I felt the pain.
And this is the shrooms doing it. The shrooms, you were high as fuck.
I was high, but it's not just the shrooms. But the medicine by itself doesn't fix anything, okay? A guided meditation by a facilitator, the right music in the right way, coming in with clear intentions and having the facilitator walk through it, what happens is you're in this neuroplasticity state, and the facilitator can help you look in the mirror and see the that's really going on.
Right.
And the type of strains that she gave me took me into this place where I could feel in every cell of my body, I could feel the pain that my children felt when I cheated on their mom. And it was so real. It was as if I was them. Yeah. And it felt like Satan himself had his foot on my chest and it was pushing me down 600 miles in the dirt. And I was like, this sucks, right? And then the facilitator changed the music to a different tone. And it brought me, I could feel this redeeming grace of God pulling me out of this hell that I had put myself in. And then boom, the music changed back to the point where I could feel I could feel the pain of the families that broke up because some guy was at my party and slept with a cheerleader and his wife left him. And then then I felt the joy of the kids when she changed the music of the kids that I had helped to rescue and they were reunited with their families. And because of the guided meditation I was doing together with that was the most profound experience of connecting with the energies of humanity and my ripple effects of my actions. That everything changed. And then this was super valuable. I came out of that and then the facilitator, I'm sitting there talking to her and I'm high as but I'm in this state, we're listening to this different music. And I said to her, I says, I had these Greek gods. I had a Poseidon and Zeus, and then I had Atlas holding the world on his shoulders. And I pointed at Atlas, and I'm in my ego self still a little bit, right? I'm like, that Atlas there, I feel like Atlas. At the time I had 4,000 employees in my company, right? I said, I feel like Atlas. I'm holding the whole world on my shoulders. And I said, but look how God made me so strong. Look how strong my stomach is there. God helped me with that. And the facilitator, Nancy, she said, I admire that you're identifying some traits in those Greek gods. She said, but what about your relationship with him? Now, one of my intentions coming in is I wanted to reestablish a healthy relationship with God, because I had left the church of my youth about 15 years before and had completely left all of that moral compass, right? So she said, what I admire that you're looking at those traits there. She said, but what about your relationship with him? And she points at this statue I had of Jesus. And I said, oh, I don't qualify for a relationship with him. And she said, well, why not? I said, well, when I left the church of my youth, I was told by my bishop that until I was rebaptized into that church, I wouldn't have the Spirit of God with me. And she said, do you really think that that's true? I said, well, no, I try to do good things. I try to help people. She said, well, why don't you work on that relationship? And so here I stand up, I'm high, I can't even walk, right?
Yeah.
She helps me take this statue down, and I sit down on the beanbag holding that statue. For the next 2 hours, I had the most beautiful, healing conversation with Jesus that I had ever had my entire life, because I had now released those things that didn't belong to me. Now I could start embracing something that I wanted to cultivate. And from there, it was such a profound change for me that we put together some retreats where I had other operators, undercover guys that had done work with me, already PTSD from, Green Beret work and whatnot, and massive transformations. They no longer needed their anxiety and depression medications and broke free of those. Then we started bringing in women who had been by their dads and grandpas and stuff, and were holding on to this trauma that 20 years worth of therapy didn't fix anything. And then I became a master facilitator together with my wife and daughter, and have now hosted and facilitated almost 80 guided meditation, plant medicine, healing experiences. And we're very intentional. Now, here's what's important. I am not only not a fan of recreational work, of recreational use of these things, I'm actually adamantly against it, because here's what happens. If you're in this sensitive state, okay, you're in a state of neuroplasticity. You're at a party with your friends, some guy's yelling at his wife over here, there's rap music going over here, whatever else, and there's no specific intentions. It's literally, you have this opportunity to create transformational change, and you're not taking advantage of it. It actually puts you in a place where it makes it more and more difficult to get in and create those changes, right? The music that you're listening to is everything. The environment that you're in is everything. Your intention coming in is everything. The meditation that you're doing as you're going into the space is everything. You put those things together, you can create miracles in that work.
And you imagine that you're healing men that were abused, mentally abused, physically abused. You are cutting off a potential buyer of.
Exactly.
What year was that, Paul?
This was about 8 years ago.
Okay. So
7 years ago now.
So you're like 3 or 4 years into doing undercover work, but you still, even after, you still did another 5-6 years after your transformation.
Everything changed in how I did it.
Okay. How so?
Everything changed. I'm writing a book called Are You Listening? With my hand on my heart. Not are you listening with my hand on my ear, but are you listening here? I through this work of releasing all of these things that didn't serve me, and through the guided meditations, I came to an understanding that all of us have the ability to feel and recognize infinite truth. Okay? So some people pray, and when they pray, think about the average way that people pray. Praying to God is very much praise. Sorry.
Please,
right?
Yeah.
Can you imagine having a relationship with somebody like that? Let's say you're trying to date a new girl, right? And you call her up and you say, hey, wow, you're so hot. You're so amazing. You're the most amazing woman I know. Praise, praise, praise. And by the way, I really up, I screwed up on this, or I left the dishes here and whatever else. And by the way, can you fix this? Can you fix this? And then you hang up the phone. She wouldn't stick with you for a day, right? That's the relationship most people have with their God, right? It's very much a one-sided thing. And so when I learned how to meditate, when I learned how to tune in, a lot of Christians think that meditation is an Eastern versus Western. No, it's not. It's something that as soon as we learn how to turn off all of these distracting thoughts and tune in to a place of truth, most people discount their intuition because they know not from where it came. They believe it comes from their limited books that they've read and people they've talked to. If they understood that it came from a place of infinite knowledge, they would trust it more. And so as I started getting into this personal transformation work using the different types of plant medicines, it opened up my, what you call your pineal gland, which is this access to the infinite world. And it allowed me to go from my head to my heart. And now I have hundreds of stories of undercover missions that weren't going in being a playboy. I, for example, here's one. I went to Haiti. I had a new team. These were a bunch of, Navy SEALs, Green Beret guys. And they were kind of taking charge and running. It was about 2 a.m. They hadn't found any. We hadn't found any connections at all. And I said, guys, can I take lead? Are you good with that? And they said, yeah. They say you're really good at this. I said, okay, you need to follow exactly what I say. I said, first things first, this isn't a religious discussion, but I need you to understand that I believe in God. I said, most people believe in a supreme being. Some people call him the universe or Jehovah or Allah or whatever. I said, it doesn't matter. God exists and cares more about these children than you and I ever could and knows exactly where they are. So if you're okay with it, I'm going to start out by asking for some help. So they're like, okay, dude. I says, okay, so just give me some time. And I just close my eyes and I start tuning in. And then I also said, I said, guys, now I need you to understand how I see fear and faith. I said, most people think that faith is going to church and asking God to fix things in their life that they don't believe are going to be fixed. That's not faith. That's blind hope. I said, faith is a principle of power. It's the most, next to unconditional love, it's the most powerful law in the universe. And it's simply this. It's the unwavering conviction that what I want to have happen will happen. The problem is that most people have a hard time with unwavering conviction of anything. Should I marry this woman? Should I start this new job? I says, I think it's because God looks down and sees what we're doing in our business and our life and says, okay, you adults do whatever you want. But I believe that God sees what's happening with these children and says, hell no. If I've got good people willing to do something, I'm going to pave the way. I said, I don't care if you think that God is a tree, a rainbow, a universe, a man or woman. It doesn't matter. There's no virtuous intelligence in the universe that's okay with an 8-year-old being. Period. So it's easy for me to have unwavering conviction that I'm going to find these kids. And so they're like, okay, dude, whatever. Right. I says, okay, just drive. And I'm just tuning in. I'm just listening. I says, okay, stop right there. He says that black alley, that motorcycle gang. I said, yeah, right there. He says, what are you going to do? I said, that guy knows something, I can tell. He said, this is a really dangerous area. We need to survey the area first. I says, no, we don't have time for that. He's going to be gone. I said, in fact, you guys are going to intimidate him. You need to stay here in the car. I said, I'm going to go talk to him myself. Because these guys are, they got tattoos and big Navy SEAL
talk
dudes,
about,
right?
Do you speak French?
No.
Oh my God.
But a lot of these traffickers speak English because that's
who they're dealing with.
Exactly. Right. And they speak Creole there. I've been there enough times where I knew a little bit, but a lot of those guys speak English. And the Navy SEAL, I said, stay here in the car. He says, are you stupid, Paul? I said, listen, I buy you pink panties when we get home. I don't have 2 weeks to find out who's selling kids. I've got to be home tomorrow and I need to get this done tonight. Right. I've got to get some leads to start on this thing. So I get out and I walk up and this guy, he's sitting on the motorcycle. He pulls up his shirt and there's a gun he shows me his gun right here as I'm just walking to him. I'm just listening. And I pull out a bill. I don't remember if it was a 20 or 100. I don't even remember. I give him like a $20 bill. I think it was 100. I give him a $100 bill. And he looks at it, he goes, what's that for? I says, that's for you. You keep it. I said, I have another one for you. You can help me with something. I got a friend. in the United States. He's coming in a few weeks. Wants me to set up a party for him. He likes 10-year-olds. This guy's like, your friend's up. I said, I know he is. I said, but you connect me with somebody who can give me what he wants. I'll give you another $100. He goes, I know who's running it all. I knew he did.
Wow.
He makes a phone call, boom, connects me with this lady who's running a strip club, who was selling kids.
Wow.
That connection with that guy is what got us all the way to the top, the biggest trafficking network in the Caribbean, with the 4 corrupt judges that got taken down because of it. Right. Another perfect example is one in Ecuador. I was the federal agents had identified. I told you the story about that little girl who was in Peru that gave us They said, okay, we need to take down some of these rings. And so they take me to this area, the federal agents take me to this area just downtown Peru in Quito, downtown Quito, and let me and a couple of my guys out. And they says, there's see what trafficking is going on here. This is where she said that she was being trafficked out of before she got moved to Peru. So we get out and there's this big courtyard. And we were standing there in the middle of the courtyard. They let us off. We walk over the courtyard and I'm looking around. There's drug dealers, prostitute. And then I see down this alley, there's this girl and she's leaning up against a wall and she's got her foot up against the wall and boom, I could feel it immediately. I said, I grabbed one of my guys. I said, Jeremy, we go down there.
What is that feeling?
It is when
you describe
start,
it?
Yeah. For me, it is a knowing. It is a knowing. I can feel. No, that yes. There's a yes, and it's a calm, peaceful. I think that the dark side can imitate all kinds of energy feelings and whatnot, but that peaceful feeling, that peaceful love feeling, is something that can't. So I could feel that. And when you get in tune, the more you meditate, the more you tune in, the more you'll be able to sense. Yeah. It gets louder. And everybody has the ability, but it's so quiet because our brain gets in the way.
So much chatter.
Yeah. You can't trust anything here. This is all. This is where it all comes in. Wow. Right? And so I feel that and I grab Jeremy. I says, right there, this is where we got to go. We walk down this alley, walk up to her. I said, I walk up to her. I says, what's your name? And, ¿Cómo te llamas? She goes, and she goes, $10, $10 and I pull out a 20 and she goes, oh, those. She looks at both of us. I said no, and I said in my broken Spanish that told her that we had some friends who were looking for us to set up some stuff, and she looked like she might have some connections that could help us. And she goes, oh no, I don't know anything about that. I says okay. She comes down like 2 minutes later. She waves me like this, and I go over. She goes, okay, come with me. She takes us down this alley, down this other one, and boom, there's this big wooden doors there. These 2 big dudes that are standing out in front, and it says hostile at the top. She whispers to them, and they nod. I give her the $20, and they said they open the door. There's a 15-year-old right there. There's other kids that are back in behind. And we, I said, exchange contact information with him. I said, yeah, we'll be back. Our boss just trying to find out, what we can do to set up some stuff down here. And then, boom, we go back to the undercover van. This guy showed him I geotagged the location. He goes, that's exactly where that girl from Peru said that she was being trafficked from. He didn't even give us, as literally 3-4 minutes after we were there, we identified. And then he said, okay, there's another lead. And this is a powerful story. He said there's this spa that was, it was like nails and hair, and they had massage, but it was a front for selling kids. He said, we got a lead about a month ago. We're going to go follow up. And we pull up and he's like, damn. I said, what? He says, it's shut down. The whole place is shut down. They must have got the lead that we were onto him. It's completely shut down. And I could feel it. He says, stop. He says, stop. I said, no, stop. He says, it's closed down. I said, stop. I can feel it. He says, okay, stop. Stops it. Boom. Petter jumps out. He's our Green Beret, and Jimmy and Jeremy, and boom, my operators. And I go back behind the van, and I'm just standing there. And these guys, by this time, they're used to how I operate, right?
You proved it to them.
Yeah, many, many, many times. So I'm standing there, and a lot of times I'll actually put my hand on my heart just to help me remember where I need to focus my energy, right? I just stand there like this, and looking around, completely shut down front there. Couple restaurants here, and there's one over here. And I'm like, that's it right there. I walk right into the restaurant, walk up to the manager. And I said, hey, supposed to be a massage place here somewhere. Do you know where it is? He goes, you have an appointment? Knew that place was still there. Bing. Right. And I said, and as soon as I said, he goes, I don't want it. So I knew it. So I went out front and I'm just standing there. There's people walking all over. And there's a lady that was walking a dog. And immediately I could feel that feeling again. So I walk up to her and I said, hey, now, you know, sometimes you have to lie when you're undercover. I said, hey, I question for you. I have an appointment. I have an appointment for a massage here, and there I don't see it anywhere. She looks me up and down. You know, I've got my big chain on and my efforts hat and all this stuff. You know, and she says, oh, picks up her phone, makes a call. Less than 2 or 3 minutes later, this madam comes and opens up these 2 big steel doors. There were no signs, no signage, anything. Right. And then boom, we walk in with me and my other operators. We could tell we were being watched. Yeah. And she takes us down this alley and then up around and into this very difficult to get to place. And in this foyer area, there's multiple rooms around the outside with a massage bed and a queen size mattress bed in every single one of the rooms. And then she opens up the menu. And this is this was the first operation with my Green Beret friend with the 300. And, you know, she starts showing us the pictures of the kids and, you know, everything else. So we geotagged that location and boom. So after, you know, we became somewhat confidential informants. We would go in, I would follow that. We would identify where they were. We would get out of country, and the next day the feds would come in and take it down. And
just following your intuition, it never failed you, it sounds like.
Never.
That's incredible.
Here's a story that is just powerful. Okay. I think you're going to love this. So in my early 20s, and this is where everything really all came around, there was a guy I met by the name of Jerry Prine. Jerry actually died in 2010, but Jerry was the inventor of a bunch of life-saving medical devices. He was the inventor of the original software that IBM used for voice recognition. Jerry never graduated from elementary school. Jerry couldn't read or write. Yeah, he was the inventor of all these things. He was tested at the university by us as the highest IQ they had ever tested, one of the highest IQs in the world. And I sat down with him, and he said to me this. He said, Paul, he said, you could have an IQ over 200 if you wanted. And I said, no, I'm really not that smart. I worked hard for my grades. I didn't even get a scholarship. He goes, no, he says, the difference between me and you is that I listen better than you. I said, you listen better than me? I touched my ear. He said, no, I listen better than you. He touched his heart. He said, do you think that I'm the inventor of those medical devices? I said, you have the patents, right? He goes, yeah, I do. I said, you're not the inventor? He goes, hell no. He said, how long has the universe been around? I said, millions of years. He said, billions upon billions of years. He said, those medical devices were invented billions of years ago. I was a better listener than you. He said, when you understand that we live in a world of universal truth and you learn how to listen, you learn how to trust it, it will guide you in everything that you do. And I started using this in building my empire, my business. You know, as soon as I felt an intuition that I needed to call, you know, Mr. Marriott or something like that, I would do so immediately, and boom, magical things happened in creating that storyboard of success.
And that ties back into faith.
Exactly. Faith isn't a religious thing. People f that all up. They think that, oh well, faith is a religion. It's not. It is a knowing. It is a tuning in to infinite power, infinite knowledge, and this is really the key to solving trafficking and everything else. It really is. The second that we recognize the divinity within ourselves and the divinity in every other person, you're not going to somebody, you're not going to kill somebody, you're not going to, all this you're not going to do. When we see, in the case of the very second that you go from taking a woman from a divine feminine to an object, you go down a dark road. It's the same energy within trafficking, with all of this. It's looking at our fellow man as something less than the divinity that they are. And this is what opened up for me in that first transformational journey experience, is it reestablished this divine connection that we have with all of humanity, that you and I aren't just sitting separate. We are connected as brothers, as energetic parts of this eternal whole. We're all one. And when we see that, we're not going to be throwing bombs at each other. We're not going to be stealing from each other. We're not going to be each other. That's what healing looks like, is that pure empathy that I felt in that transformational journey. And then from there, tuning in to that spirit of truth and that guidance that we can all access as we move through our life.
Did you feel that intuition on your last mission, on your last mission, where you were like, I'm done?
Yeah.
Where was that?
That was in Ecuador. It was at the end of it. I actually didn't feel it on that last mission. I started recognizing that this world, we're not physical beings having a spiritual experience. We're spiritual beings having a physical experience, right? There's so much more to our world than we all recognize. And that there are some people who have what I call spiritual gifts. And there are some people where the veil is thinner for them. The veil is, when we were born, we don't remember. We don't remember being brothers. We don't remember being with God. We don't remember, right? And this is why we come to this life and we're relying on our five senses. We're trying to figure out how to be successful and be happy and all this other stuff, right? Is because we have this veil of forgetfulness. And the proper use of certain psychedelics thin that veil.
Yeah.
Now, here's the problem. If you're thinning that veil in a place where you've got rap music and all this, even just sex going on that's out of alignment, you might thin that veil in a place where there are intelligences that are not in line with your highest self. Just like there's good and bad people in the world that do. On the other side, there's people who are fully in line. There's powers that are in line with the best version of you, and there's ones that aren't. So you're thinning that in the wrong place. It's going to take you down the wrong road. Well, after that last mission, there was a lady, you would call them mediums. Okay. Mediums are ones who that veil is thinner for them, right? Her gift is in speaking to your guides, to helping you identify your divine gifts, your purpose in life and whatnot. She's really, really, really good. And we sat down with her. She doesn't want to know your birth date, your background. She doesn't want to know anything about you. She just sits and she's blind as a bat. She's got big fat glasses. And she's like, wow. She said, I've been doing this for 35 years. I've never seen this. I'm like, well, what? She said, you must have been drunk or high when you accepted your mission on Earth. She said, this is huge. She said, you're going to have a positive impact in the lives of humanity. And I said, well, I invested in a movie. I think we'll do good, but it's worth nothing right now. It's, I don't know where that's going. She said, well, no, she said, I see your face everywhere. I see you speaking. I says, well, you got that wrong. My face is nowhere. Because I undercover, I had taken down my social media profile, everything completely gone. She goes, no, she said, you have the ability to connect with people on every level. She says, there's something you've done in your life where you've seen the darkest part of humanity and you can help humanity get to a place of light because you've seen the darkness. She said, I whatever you're doing right now in that darkness, you're done. You're done.
Wow.
She said, you need to go public with whatever it is, and you need to, and I'm like, I don't want to. I never wanted to go public. It's stupid. It's stupid for me to go public with the traffickers that I've been face to face with. There's guys in Mexico who were running the Sinaloa cartel for their entire region who are in prison because of me.
No way. For charges?
Yes.
In Mexico.
In Mexico.
Wow.
Right. So for me to say, hey, I'm not Paul Stone, I'm Paul Hutchinson, that's an incredibly stupid move.
Dangerous.
Right? And so I pushed back for a few months. I pushed back, and my wife and my daughter are like, no, you have to. I said, no, this puts you guys in danger by me doing this. They said, no, you have to. You have got to go public with this, because at the time the movie was nothing.
Yeah.
We had no distribution whatsoever, nothing. And the agent that I had worked with before had gone down another road that we weren't working with. And so finally I decided, you know what, I'll go ahead and do that. And I got on my first podcast, got shared tens of thousands of times in a matter of a couple weeks. The energy started moving forward. Within a couple months, Angel Studios picked up the contract on distribution for the Sound of Freedom movie. Boom, it became the #1 independent film in the world. 70 million people have seen that film. Hundreds of millions of children are safer. And now I have a platform, the ability to go in and talk and share these stories with influencers like you, who are touching the hearts of millions of people.
Wow. Just because you trusted.
I trusted her. And I trusted.
And you just trusted.
Well, at first I didn't trust her.
Yeah.
But then I went into a meditation. And in this meditation, I saw everything that she had seen. And it showed me clearly that I would be protected, that even those people who are, former drug lords and stuff would see where my heart is, that together we could release all this that we've done. I've done as much as anybody on your show, right? I've done some horrific things with ripping apart families and all my sexual addictions and all these things. I've done so many things that all of us have things in our past, things that were done to us and things that we have done that we can heal from. So now you're out of the game. Do you miss it at all? Do you miss the missions? Yeah. Every time I get in a fight with my wife, she says, you miss going undercover. You just like pissing off Colombians. That's what you like doing. Did you ever get an offer, like a higher up offer from the CIA or the FBI or anything like that? No, I really thought that after that FBI agent knocked on my door, and after my attorney called me back laughing, I called the special agent in charge, and I simply gave all of the details of that operation, because they just need me to testify against him. Right. So I just gave her everything. I didn't ever have to go fly in to do so. I really thought at that point that I would get recruited. I didn't. Would you have accepted though? No, I wouldn't. Like, what can they give you? A raise? Yeah, nothing. And they know that they know that there's a part of me that dislikes the establishment, as constituted. Right. And you're taking psilocybin at this point. You're all into healing and energy, and you're at such a higher frequency than a truly criminal organization like the CIA. I 100% agree with you. And they know that I am willing to go public with the interviews that I've had and the operators that I've worked with, who know how dirty they are, Wow. And here's the thing. I think that the dirtiness goes outside of our country in a lot of ways. I think there are very powerful entities that are actually sadly controlling our public figures in this country, and are doing so because of their blackmail that they have on them. Well, Paul, you're an amazing man. I'm honored. This is what makes my job fun, is when I get these kind of interviews. They're few and far between, but I really, really appreciate your time. Tell us about the book, where they can get it. It's releasing, I think, July 29th. July 29th, yeah. Can they pre-order it? Yeah. You can go to liberatinghumanity.com and get it. Or you can do, if you can't remember Liberating Humanity, you can just go to soundoffreedombook.com and it goes right into the Liberating Humanity site, where you can pre-order it there. It'll be out on Amazon and bookstores, etc. Now, what's important is that the book isn't just like the movie. It's not just the rescue missions themselves. I take the reader through the emotional transformation that I had in doing some of the work, and then just like we talked about here. But in addition to that, the first section of the book, the first 6 chapters, is all about keeping your kids safe. I called it the making of an undercover operator, what we had to do to be safe in those situations, and teaching the reader operational awareness and situational awareness, and how to be able to read a room, etc. These are if you ever get to a point where you have to use your hard skills, your Krav Maga, you've already missed 95% of the things that could have kept you and your family safe. Right. And then the last part, the last section of the book, after the operations in the jungle as a doctor, operations in Haiti, et cetera, all of those ones that the last part is all about healing humanity, about liberating humanity and what that's going to take for us all to change how we look in the mirror, what we're doing with that man inside, what we can do to contribute to a better world around us. And it's going to be really beautiful. So if somebody wants more information on keeping their kids safe or the book, they can go to liberatinghumanity.com.
Link will be in the description of the episode as well, and links to all your platforms and everything like that.
Perfect. Yeah. Or the Child Liberation Foundation is just childliberation.org. And instead of funding a bunch of additional rescue missions, yes, we have operators that work with other foundations that we help to fund, but internally, our goal is a way bigger picture. I believe we have saved countless thousands, hundreds of thousands of children more through teaching certification programs for the doctors, for the hospitals, for the people in hospitality, et cetera, and helping to change laws and policies to keep the children safe. So we're making a huge, huge impact in that space, and the healing programs for the children that are in the safe houses themselves.
Amazing. Can I donate?
I would love to.
Yeah.
I'll make a donation. That would be huge. Absolutely.
And go buy his book, Paul Hutchinson. Thank you so much. We're going to switch over to the Patreon because I don't want you to go, man. We got so much more to talk about. We get some dirt
on the Patreon.
That's it. Yeah, that's right. That's where we talk about. That's where Paul unveils the Epstein tapes. He's got he has the files. Thank you so much, brother. What a treat.
Oh, I'm super grateful. And the reality is, it's not guys like me that make the biggest difference. It's actually guys like you. Back at the time of Abraham Lincoln, it wasn't the guys rescuing the slaves that created the difference. It was people like Harriet Beecher Stowe, who wrote the book Uncle Tom's Cabin, which was the podcast of the age, right? Created an awareness with good people of what was going on in the South. And in fact, years later, when Abraham Lincoln met Harriet, he shook her hand. He says, "So you're the little lady that wrote the book that started the big war." And so it's influencers like you that are getting the message out, that are helping humanity see, you know what? Yeah, we can do something about this. We can make a positive impact in our families, in our world, in ourselves. That's going to make a big difference for our future.
Amen. Amen. You heard it first. I am a modern day
Harriet Beecher Stowe.
Harriet Beecher Stowe. All right, you guys. We'll see you over on the Patreon. Thanks again, Paul.
Thank you.